We are here from Hillsboro, Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Highland County. And so we welcome everyone who is watching us live stream. And how many of you have ever been up on like a mountaintop? Okay, about 3 or 4. Okay, 5. Of course, the Canadian. Yeah, the closest I would have been is when I was 5 years old, when I went up to the top of Pikes Peak. And you know, it's straight up from the plane, just outside Colorado. Has anyone been on Pikes Peak? Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's about the closest. And you looked out over the plane. And I think you could see Denver. And this has been back in 64, probably 65. So I remember that. Which fallen human being would you say probably had the closest relationship with God? John's on fire today. He's got the 400th anniversary. I didn't know this. This is a Hillsboro factoid. This Thanksgiving will be the 400th Thanksgiving, because the first one was in 1620. But yeah, it would be Moses. It would be Moses. It says the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, just as a man speaks to his friend. Now, I clearly wasn't speaking as I'm seeing Maddie face to face. But clearly, God descended enough that Moses was allowed maybe to see the form, the color, or whatever. The closest probably any fallen, sinful being has been. And Mrs. White talked about in the ministry of healing. And this is kind of where I got the idea for this sermon. She talked about 3 mountaintop experiences Moses had with God. And so let's go through those 3 mountaintop experiences where Moses saw things that no mortal being has yet experienced or seen. Now, of course, Moses' first encounter was when he was an 80-year-old shepherd in Midian, kind of taking care of his father-in-law Jethro's flock. And the angel of the Lord caused the 80-year-old shepherd Moses up to Horeb, what we knew as Mount Sinai. Horeb, the mountain of God. And so Moses comes there, and so if you'll turn with me to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. Let's read verse 1, then we'll jump to verse 6. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Verse 4. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said also, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Verse 10 through 15. Therefore come now, I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt. And he said, Certainly I will be with you. And this shall be the sign to you, that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he says, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God furthermore said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations. Okay, I have a couple people here I did Bible studies with. I'm going to put you on the spot. What is the Hebrew word for I am? What is the holy name of God? We'll say it. Yahweh. Yes. Yahweh. That is the holy name of God. So God condescends to Moses. Of course, that is the pre-incarnate Christ at the burning bush. But he tells Moses his name, the great I am, a revelation of who he is, along with his name. Moses, with Yahweh by his side, will lead the children of Israel to the land that God had originally promised to Abraham some 700 years before. And this is very specific about this encounter at Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai. If you understand, Moses first off received a special revelation from Yahweh, and he also received a specific commission from him. Just exactly like Saul of Tarsus did on the road to Damascus. A special revelation and a special commission. So God, on their first mountaintop experience, takes this 80-year-old shepherd, who of course had been a prince of Egypt, going back to Egypt to free the people who had been there for over 430 years. So that was the first one. The second experience there at Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai, was immediately post-calf, right after the golden calf. And things are a little tense with Yahweh and with Moses. They're a little tense now. And so if we'll go to Exodus 33, verses 12 through 17. This is Moses having to go back up Mount Sinai again to get a second copy of the 10 Commandments, or as they say in Hebrew, the 10 words. And so he goes up, and we can see Moses as the mediator between God and angry Yahweh and the disobedient people in whom God has just brought out of slavery, who has parted the waters of the Red Sea, brought them to that mountain, and then they build a golden calf, and Moses, in anger, breaks the tablet. Exodus 33, verses 12 through 17. Moses said to the Lord, See, you are saying to me, Take up this people, but you have not let me know what you will send with me. Yet you said, I know you by name, and also you have found favor in my eyes. And now if indeed I have found favor in your eyes, let me know your ways, that I may know you, so that I might find favor in your eyes, and see that this nation is your people. Then he said, now in your version, it might say glory or presence. What does it say? Then he said, my glory or my presence. Is it one of those two words? The more direct translation from the Hebrew, my face, which is his glory and his presence. Basically, God, Yahweh, in verse 14 says to Moses, my face will go, and I will make rest for you. And he said to him, if your face is not going, do not take us up from here. Better they should drop dead in the desert at the foot of Yahweh's mountain than traverse the wilderness and inhabit Canaan without the divine presence. And by what then will it be known that I have found favor in your eyes, I and your people? Is it not by your going with us? Then I and your people will be distinguished from all peoples that are on the earth's face. Yahweh said to Moses, even this thing that you have spoken, I will do, for you have found favor in my eyes, and I have known you by name. A very interesting conversation. Moses' appeal to God that he not abandon the children of Israel. Moses' mediator for a disobedient people. And Yahweh, in his love, says, because of you, Moses, because you have found favor in my eyes. I mean, isn't that something for a fallen human being? That you have found favor in your eyes. I will allow my face to lead this children to the promised land. My face, my glory, my presence. Then Moses makes, in many ways, an unbelievable appeal to this friend. And he's hearkening back in some way to that appeal when he was the 80-year-old shepherd. I mean, this was the man who could not look straight at the burning bush. Now request something in verse 18. Then Moses said, I pray you, show me what? Your glory. I mean, before he had his head down before the burning bush, he could not even look. But now, Moses' request sums up what many of us want, correct, in this fallen world. God, show us your glory. Show us your presence. Show us your face. Basically, the technical term is a theophany, when God in some ways appears to us. A theophany. If you remember when Mrs. White was in vision and she was up in the heavenly throne room, she would mutter the words glory, glory, glory when she was in that presence. This is an incredible request. It is not stated in an arrogant term, because Moses was not an arrogant man. He said, I just want one thing. Show me your glory. Show me your presence. Show me your face. A visible appearance of God. And in the Old Testament, it's usually the pre-incarnate Christ. And so, this incredible request, God condescends to Moses' request in verses 19 and 20. And he said, I myself will make all my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show compassion on whom I will show compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live. So first off, the Lord condescends to be inspected by Moses. But Moses is not entitled to look long. He will be given only a brief glimpse. Yahweh, however, is promising to reveal to Moses his personal characteristics of who he is. And so while Moses cannot directly see his face, God is going to reveal more of his glory that he's ever done to any fallen human being. So, and this is very, very touching here as we read verses 21, 22, and 23. Then the Lord said, behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand there on the rock. And it will come about while my glory is passing by, that I will place you in the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. Imagine this. God picks Moses up lovingly and puts him into the cleft of the rock. He has his hand and shields this man. So if he mistakenly saw something that could kill him, God protects him. Being a mortal, sinful man, Moses could only view the divine back and not his face or front side. So God picks him up. Just like we would pick up a little bird and places it lovingly in a nest and has its hand of protection over it. And then he passes by. And I had my former professor, Dr. Van Bemmelen. He called this the John 3:16 of the Old Testament. I'll read Exodus 34, verses 6 and 7. Then the Lord passed by in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in loving kindness and truth, who keeps loving kindness for thousands, who forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin, yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, visiting the iniquity of fathers on the children and on the grandchildren to the third and fourth generations. A verbal portrait of Yahweh's personality, a very long divine name, and not a visual image. And this came after the golden calf fiasco. A God who both rewards and punishes, though we know he would much rather reward, right, than punish. The second experience, the second theophany, on the top of the mountain, Mount Horeb, that God had with Moses. And of course, Moses doesn't know this. He's going to now spend 40 years in the wilderness, right? With this disobedient church that he has. 40 years. Griping and complaining. And so this church, Moses had to pastor for 40 years in the wilderness. Now, Moses was still their mediator for them before God when God wanted to destroy them and begin anew just with his special friend, Moses. And finally, probably toward the end of that 40 years, if we'll turn to Numbers, chapter 20, verses 2 and 7, even a very patient man loses his patience. And if you notice, this is not on a mountaintop setting. This is out in the desert. And the people are griping and complaining again. Why did you bring us out here? Oh, the leeks and cucumbers of Egypt were so good. Oh, we should never have left. Why did you get us? On and on and on. So, Numbers Chapter 20, verses 2 through 7. There was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves against Moses and Aaron. The people thus contended with Moses and spoke, saying, If only we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Why then have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die here? Why have you made us come up from Egypt to bring us to this wretched place? It is not a place of grain, or figs, or vines, or pomegranates, nor is there water to drink. Then Moses and Aaron came in from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting, and fell on their faces. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, assemble the congregation. Speak to the rock before their eyes, that it may yield its water. You shall thus bring forth water for them out of the rock, and let the congregation and their beasts drink. So, Yahweh gives him instructions. Go take the rod. This is at the waters of Meribah. Strike the rock, and it may yield its water. Verse 9. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord, just as he commanded him. Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, you can see Moses is fed up. Listen now, you what? What does it say? Rebels. I mean, this is a guy, this has been going on for probably 36. He's had it. Listen now, you rebels. Shall we, this is where he mixes up, shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock? Then Moses lifted up his hand, struck the rock twice with his rod. Water came forth abundantly, the congregation and their beasts drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you have not believed me, to treat me as holy in the sight of the sons of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. And not long after that, Aaron passes away. Moses and Aaron disregarded the Lord's instructions, and they took personal credit for water springing out from the rock of Meribah. When I was only briefly acquainted with the Bible, I really felt bad for Moses. I mean, did you? This guy put up with so much. Yeah, he blew it. But I remember looking at him going, man, that's a gotcha moment. Just someone waiting, wait, I got you now. You're not going to the promised land. Now there's your brother. Of course, we don't know the end. We do know the end of the story. What's going to happen? If you saw the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, I think the final scene is, I think Charlton Heston was maybe 32 when he did the Ten Commandments. But he's all in white. The white beard is down his belly button. But he's sitting up there on the mountain, and he's seeing them go across. They finish it fairly well. And so we need to go now. We go from the plain of Meribah. We're going to go back up to a mountain for the last experience between Moses and Yahweh. And let's go. Carter read some of these verses. Let's go back. Because this is the final mountaintop experience. On the top Mount Nebo at Pisgah. Their last mountaintop experience together. Now Moses went up from the plain of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all of Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, And then Negev and the plain in the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not go over there. Of course, he's 120 years old. But he gives this sweeping panoramic view of the promised land, the land which had been promised to a man named Abram 700 years before. We think around 2100 BC. This is around probably 1400 BC. He says, you're going to see everything around, but you cannot go across. And of course, only Joshua and Caleb would be the two that would cross. But now we have, I think, one of the most touching verses in all the Bible. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he, who's he? And he, who is he? Verse 6, and he, God, Yahweh. And Yahweh buried Moses in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his burial place to this day. Although Moses was 120 years old when he died, his eye was not dim, nor his vigor abated. So the sons of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Then the day of weeping and mourning for Moses came to an end. God buried Moses. Can you imagine that? In the Jewish rabbinical schools, Jewish tradition states that Moses died in God's arms. And this is why it says God and his angels were set down to bury the body of Moses. Imagine that. God, Yahweh. I think of this, and I think of an old Irish song. Bang the drum slowly and play the pipe lowly. To dust be returning, from dust we begin. Bang the drum slowly, I'll speak of things holy. Above and below me, world without end. And in many ways, that was the final moments, a type of banging the drum. But we also know that's not the end of the story. Even as that beautiful moment of God and his angels coming down, and it says they buried him in a place no human being knew. But we do know Moses is not in that ground, is he? He is not there. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 478 to 479. But he, Moses, was not long to remain in the tomb. Christ himself, with the angels who had buried Moses, came down from heaven to call forth the sleeping saint. Satan had exulted as his success in causing Moses to sin against God and thus come under the dominion of death. For the first time, Christ was about to give life to the dead. As the Prince of Life and the Shining Ones approached the grave, Satan was alarmed for his supremacy. And of course it says in Jude 9, but Michael, Christ the archangel, when he disputed with the devil and argued about the body of Moses, did not dare pronounce against him a railing judgment, but said, the Lord rebuke you. Christ broke the power of the fallen foe, and Moses, as you could say, the first fruits of the resurrection of mortal beings, bringing the dead to life. The resurrection with the raising of Moses, Mrs. White said, was now made certain. Satan had lost his prey, and the righteous dead would live again. And we know that because on the Mount of Transfiguration, we know Elijah was translated, and Moses was there too, right? So you have the two types of saints. Those, the few that were translated, and those who are the first fruits of the resurrection of the righteous, and Moses is there. And so, because Moses was personally resurrected, we can all have faith that he will resurrect the rest of his saints, past, present, and future, on resurrection morning. And so from a story, a sad story, of a good man who made that one mistake, he is raised from the dead. Moses is the first fruits for us, that Christ has the power over death, and he can break the chains of death. Why? Because if Moses lives, we will live one day also. And that's good news. I'll have the praise group come up.